It was a dark summer night. The woman was sitting in her car, and she felt like her life was over. How did this happen, she wondered. Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt like your life as you knew it was over? I actually think this is a fabulous thing. As scary as that sounds, this has happened to me. And unlike Mary Oliver, who said, "What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" This woman had no plans. She had no life that she could think of moving forward. Her life as she knew it was over. You may ask, why is this a fabulous thing? You may ask, why is this a fabulous thing? Anyone? Why? Let me tell you, because this actually gives you the opportunity to practice courage. And today, as I share with you, living within out, courage is the cornerstone of this for me. And I'm going to share with you why I think that I encourage you to practice courage. The word courage comes from cor in Latin, from the heart. And speaking and living and being from the heart is an inside job. I found that being willing to be willing is an act of courage. We all have opportunities every single day to practice courage. And this woman had to practice tremendous amount of courage. Courage often shows up as an opportunity when we're in doubt, when we are doubting what's showing up, we don't think we're good enough, I don't know how to do that. What is going to happen? How can I handle this situation? So that doubt is showing up, that fear is showing up. And what I have found is that being willing to be willing allows us to release that doubt, to see that there may be some other way. And along with courage, there's a surrender. So the fear is showing up, there's a call to bravery, there's a call to courage, and surrender is that process of letting go, of accepting what is. We can't move forward if we're not accepting what's in the present moment. This woman had to accept the present moment. And then acknowledging our wholeness. So knowing that courage, that bravery is an opportunity to step into wholeness. So taking courageous action from the heart. So I love this quote from Waldo Emerson. He says, "Whatever course you decide upon, there is always someone to tell you that you are wrong. There are always difficulties arising which tempt you to believe that the critics are right. To map out a course of action and follow it to the end requires courage." And I just want to add that sometimes the map and the course of action may be simply to take one courageous step. So I ask you, what courageous, heart-based action do you need to take today? Every day we have an opportunity to be courageous. Sometimes getting out of bed is a courageous act, right? So I want to share another quote with you from the great philosopher Anonymous. He says, "Keep faith. The most amazing things in life tend to happen right at the moment when you're about to give up hope." So the story continues. This woman felt like her life was over. She was sitting in her car. She had just been pulled over by the police. She was in a place of fear. She was out in the mountains in a tiny little town. And it wasn't until that moment that she was stopped and sitting in this car that she realized how intoxicated she was. She was scared. She thought her life was over. And the police officer walked up to the car, and if you've been pulled over, you may remember it feels like a million years. And he asked her, "Did you know how fast you were going?" And she was like, "No." I mean, she was having trouble seeing straight, and she was ashamed. She was scared. She felt like her life was over. And the police officer said, "You know, you just went through this mountain town, the speed changed. Please be more careful." And he gave her a warning. And in that moment, she had hope. She had faith. She had faith that she could begin again. And it was just the tiniest bit of faith, but it was enough, and it came from somewhere beyond her understanding, something greater than herself, some kind of higher power. And she drove home very slowly. She realized that she had been slowly committing suicide. She'd actually begun a recovery process because she had given up the drugs of her choice several months before. She didn't think alcohol was a problem, but it was, obviously. She could have killed herself. She could have killed somebody else. It was a dire situation. And so, thankfully, she made it home safely. The next day, she woke up and decided she needed to live in faith, and that courage was going to be the map of her moving forward through each hour, through each day, moving forward into each aspect of her life. She had no idea what the plan was, except to act courageously. Faith is like Wi-Fi. It's invisible, but it has the power to connect you to what you need. And that's by that famous person, Anonymous, again. So having faith, believing in something greater than yourself, is powerful. Because when we are in fear, we are stagnant. We are stuck. We are in a place of not being able to see anything other than usually what our egoic mind is telling us, or where we're focused in that moment. And faith is understanding that there's something greater. So how do we act in faith? How does faith show up in our lives? What I have found is that faith has been a process of slowing down. This microphone loves me. It's slowing down into the moment, breathing. It's being mindful. And mindfulness is a meditation type practice of just simply being right here, right now. And I think it's ironic, the word mindful makes you think of full, but really it's kind of an emptying. I'm emptying all the thoughts, and I'm just simply breathing and being in this moment. And then seeing the sacred all around us. Everything is sacred. This moment is sacred. And I find that when I'm able to slow down, to be mindful, to be in the present moment that is sacred, that's faith. Because there's an understanding that there's so much more going on in the world that I have no idea about. And I can just step into faith and move forward. So along with those, the last thing I want to share on faith is prayer, is to step into prayer. This woman that night, she wouldn't have called it prayer at the time, but she started to affirm, she started to believe, she started to know that with that little bit of faith, that life could be better for her, that there was hope, that there was an opportunity for change. And that was really powerful. And so often in affirmative prayer, we often may know a situation that is not what we want. And so what I like to encourage is to see the opposite, to act as if. So that night she knew that she did not want to be where she was ever again. That was her rock bottom, that was her low. She saw that there could only be one way, which is up. She acted as if it was only going to get better. I love to use the example of my daughter. I used to be a live-in nanny, and my daughter and I lived in the basement of these homes with these two girls that I took to school. We took care of them, and it was a beautiful environment as a single mom for my daughter to play with the kids. They had this enormous playroom upstairs, and they would play teacher. They would play parents, mom, dad, kids, and they would act as if. They would use their imagination. They would pretend, they would make believe that they were the teachers, that they were the parents, and they would act as if. And I encourage you, this is an opportunity for you to have that courage to act in faith and act as if. Whatever area in your life you want to change or you want to transform or shift, act as if. So I ask you, what are you willing to release and to step in faith about? Can you act as if in that space? One of my all-time favorite quotes is by Martin Luther King. He says, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And that is exactly what that woman did. She took the next step, next day, just doing the next right thing. Very powerful. So the story continues. The woman, as I mentioned, drove home very slowly. She woke up the next day. She acted from courage, from faith. And she began to rise up. Like the phoenix that rises from the ashes, she transformed herself. She is no longer that same person that she once was. She took action to notice what resistance was showing up. So much of her pain was being covered up by the drugs, by the alcohol, and she was numbing herself for so many years, for 30 years, since the very beginning of her life. And she began to feel. She began to rise up and allow herself to accept the present moment, to go through the process of healing, to releasing her trauma from her childhood, and take each day as a place of moving from the bottom up. She had no plans of being a young child and what do you want to be when you grow up. She wanted to be alive. She wanted to breathe. She could not breathe as a child, and all she wanted to do was breathe. And she spent so many years not taking advantage of that opportunity because the pain was so great. So she, as she went home that day, really began her recovery. She began to draw on the strength. She began to evolve, just like I mentioned, the phoenix. That comes from Egyptian and Greek mythology thousands of years ago. And this was really a tremendous feat for this woman because her pain was so great. And as Robert Frost says, the best way out is always through. So that woman was me. 18 and a half years ago. And this is how I have learned to live from within out. And still every single day, some of you know this, I joke and I call myself Courageous Casey. Every day is an act of courage. I also like to say I'm Casey Love because my last name is Casey Fight, or my last name is Fight, and I've been fighting my entire life, and I'm really just wanting to step into love and living from my heart. And so I want to read to you, as I mentioned at the beginning, that Mary Oliver poem, because now there is a plan. So as I read this poem, I want to just remind you of my mention of slowing down, being mindful, and honoring the sacred, because I believe that Mary Oliver exemplifies all of that in this poem, and it's called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean the one who has flung itself out on the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts up her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Oh, gosh, sorry, I didn't expect that. So, in conclusion, it's all about courage and faith, believing in something greater than yourself so that you can rise up and evolve. Giving up is so easy. It's so easy to numb ourselves. It's so easy to not care, to hide. But being courageous is the work. Having faith is the key. And rising up comes from within. So let's bring our hearts into the faith and make it happen. And one last quote by my favorite person, Anonymous. Faith it till you make it. So I ask you, what mountains are you moving? What courageous, heart-based actions are you taking today? What are you willing, maybe willing to be willing to release into faith? How will you use these answers to rise up? So I invite you to close your eyes if you'd like. We're going to move into prayer. And just ground and just center yourself. And let's take a deep breath together. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Out through the mouth. Let it go. And I know that I speak these words right here, right now, that we are divine. We are souls that have come here to live in courage. That the amazing energy, that the divine love, the source that is all that there is present right here, right now, in this moment. This moment is all that we have. And I know that this is who I am, this courageous being in this moment. And I know that that is who you are, that we are in faith. We have the courage, and we rise up. And whatever is showing up in our life that challenges us, that troubles us, the doubts, the fears, the day-to-day, the big, the small, that we are blessed. That we are able to contemplate, what is it that we do with this one wild and precious life? I just breathe into this moment, feeling the divine, being and knowing that we are blessed. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for this moment, for this path, this life, for all of you, for the joy it is to be alive. I say thank you with so much gratitude. And we release this prayer knowing that it is already so right here, right now. There is nothing left to do, to be. Let's just breathe and let it go. And so it is.